How are you? Good to see you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Taves, and I'm the event coordinator here at the Robinson. I also never received personal applause, so many thanks. I'm just going to quickly turn down the feedback from this microphone and come back very professionally. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are here in Treaty 1 territory, and the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Innuit, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. We are gathered here today for a very special occasion, and that is, of course, to celebrate the publication of the latest book by Jenny Heijun Wills, Everything and Everything. It is, of course, published by McClelland and Stewart, a subsidiary of Knopf Canada, and we're very grateful to them, most of all, for publishing this book, but also, of course, for helping to make this evening a possibility so we could all gather and celebrate. And as part of this celebration, we've roped in our good friends at Plume, formerly the Winnipeg International Writers Festival. This event is being presented as part of Thin Air 2024. You'll be hearing a little bit more from the festival's director, Charlene Deal, at the close of the event. Suffice it to say, we're fond of them, and we're delighted that they're here to celebrate this book with us tonight. We have some guest readers for you this evening to kick off the event as well, and you'll be hearing some introductions by our host for the evening, the inimitable Lindsay Wong, in just a few moments. I'm going to make you applaud Lindsay twice, so prepare yourself. And then, of course, we will be hearing from the incredible Jenny Heijun Wills. Now, just a few quick notes of our procedure for the evening. So there will be some readings from up here, then there will be a conversation and a reading that will take place from these chairs to my left. Following that, as time permits, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. If you do have a question, please allow them to percolate over the evening and just put up your hand. I'll approach you in a non-threatening way with this microphone, which ensures that those watching at home can hear your question, and then at the close of the event, you'll hear about something. If you'll indulge me for one moment, with this second volume of writing, Jenny Heijun Wills has cemented herself within my own personal pantheon of writers. The advanced reading copy arrived the day before I moved, which is always an incredibly non-stressful event, and I started reading it while perched on a pile of boxes. It was the only book I read for over a month, but just as the Writers' Trust Awards are legally obligated to shortlist any of Jenny's writing once it appears in print, I felt personally and morally obliged to immediately dive in. I could deluge you in high-flying adjectives about just how exceptional her writing is, but for the sake of eloquence and authority, we'll defer to Writers' Trust juror Annie Dashkar, who had this to say about Jenny's latest work. Everything and Nothing at All combines memoir and cultural analysis to weave a rich and complex tapestry of identity, belonging, and rejection in the context of self, family, and communities both large and small. These richly decorated and incisive essays are sometimes poignant, sometimes harrowing, and always rooted deeply in Wills's lived experience, even as she finds parallels in literature and the world at large. In elegant prose, Wills fashions a searing cultural and social commentary and a moving personal journey that considers and challenges what it means to be seen and unseen. I'll be back at the close, or I won't be back at the close of the event, but I do have the pleasure of introducing tonight's host, so I will do that instead. Here to speak first and introduce our guest readers is host Lindsay Wong. Wong is the author of the critically acclaimed, award-winning, and best-selling memoir, The Woo Woo, which was a finalist for Canada Reads 2019, and the acclaimed collection of short stories, Tell Me Pleasant Things About Immortality, which is both darkly humorous and intensely disturbing in the best possible way. She also has written a YA novel entitled My Summer of Love and Misfortune. She holds a BFA in creative writing from the University of British Columbia and an MFA in literary nonfiction from Columbia University. She currently teaches creative writing at the University of Winnipeg. Please give her an even more boisterously appreciative round.
evening, everyone. How's the volume on this? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us all today at the launch of Jenny Heijun Wills' brilliant new book, Everything and Nothing at All Essays. We are here on Treaty 1 territory, home of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Dakota, Dene, Métis, and Ojibwe nations. I want to thank McNally Robinson, especially organizer John Taves, Thin Air, Plume, the International Winnipeg Writers Festival, led by Charlene Deal, I see you in the back, hi, and Kingman Random House Canada and Scott Sellers for bringing us all together for the celebration of literary excellence. I want to start the event by inviting some of Jenny's wonderful students to share their creative work with us. I see you kind of just hiding in the front. Are you ready? Yes, okay, I have no choice. I think our first reader for the evening is Jason Stefanik, who's the author of Night Became Years, first published in 2018, and a forthcoming novel about the vampire and werewolf clashes in 1990s Winnipeg. I need to hear this novel and I need to read it now. An adopted Métis child raised in a St. Andrew's bungalow, Stefanik sees his reason for pursuing writing from an early age as an attempt to understand his status as a 60s scoop survivor. Stefanik dropped out of the University of Winnipeg in 1997 to assist in raising his first daughter, but has now returned to pursue an English degree. He has hitchhiked twice across Western Canada, worked in construction, publishing, washed dishes in multiple provinces, including beloved Boogie's Diner at Redwood in Maine, hopped freight trains with hobos, fought forest fires in the Yukon, and reported stories for community and Indigenous newspapers across Manitoba and the Rocky Mountains. Today, he's proud to live in Seven Oaks with his two youngest daughters, a half section away from Frog Plain. So please welcome Jason.
Thank you. Testing, 1, 2. It's hard to speak after Jonathan, boy. Silky voice. But not until I workshopped with Jenny had I been exposed to a dizzying range of creative nonfiction and nonfiction texts. Jenny's boundless combination of justice and empathy is something that I will forever feel inspired by. Knowing Jenny, it is no wonder that the courage and artistry of her books speak to and for so many. Thank you to Lindsay, to McNally and Plume organizers. It's a great honor to read tonight with Rowan and Jenny. This short poem I wrote for a poet friend of mine who lived in New York 3 years ago. He was the lead singer of a band called the Silver Jews. Menthol Plain for David Berman. Grayscale, green screen, rub-a-tugs, cash and carries, caffeine zazen in bargain bins of everything, passive but spiteful, government signage, training hog techs, healthcare data analysts, the cement broken open at my syncopation smoke hand, the boarded Odeon with alley and peep show, glory hole, 3 windows in the high rise, write hymns to Golden Boy, post-collapse, menthol plain, wallowing lo-fi. And the last poem I'll read is for Mikhail Bulgakov. I wrote this because I'm often thinking about writers who are killed and treated unjustly by authoritarian regimes. Exactly 100 years ago tonight, Bulgakov was sent to the Gulag by Joseph Putin. I've cribbed and updated this from Master and the Margarita. Zello's Cream for Mikhail Bulgakov. She spies in the mirror's corner where the moon crosses her garters. Can ceiling fans kill? Likewise, she'd care avoid the stipple. Yet any obstacle from Master. Beguiling hangover to see a ragged tabby cat with eye patch and offset cane tipping a bowler hat as it struts up to her cart this afternoon in the supermarket. Moments before she intoned with Whitney Houston over intercom, and the cat addressed her deepest thoughts. Lusty woman who wants to dance with someone you can no longer attain, by tonight's full moon, apply this grease with generous gloves to your body and you'll fly to your lover on currents of air. She grinned. She knew the cat hadn't meant her husband. From those scruffy paws, she accepted a silver tube, watching its orange wick of tail browsing aisles of pickled herring, frozen cakes, ring pops. Evening and tail checking the sky, but now arrives the chance to try. Garters off, hairpins tossed to the dark, she feels on quite the dalliance for Eros, splooging the grease up her legs, along her arms and hands across her chest. At once, she's prickling from within with jolly mischief. Tinglies in her toes, before she knows, she rises from her duvet as the pooch howls. She throws her wristwatch on the floor. Miss Margarita, her son's nanny, runs in. You float, your skin is glowing like acetite. Margarita dog paddles through air, clears a burrow, picks up a marble bookend. Have my car, Nina, my cell, keep the purses you like. Please check he doesn't read my texts. I hate that numpty pecker face. Nina is undressing, down to yoga pants. Right the hell on, Margarita whoops. Rub in lotion. Margarita smashes the bookend through the study window, lunging toward the stars without peering below. Nina undulates above the Royal Bank of Canada. They soar toward where suburbs break into fields, to the spectral babbling of a thawing lake, where hilltops shine adorned with fires and revelers. When, upon landing, they can hear the cat whisper, "The kingdom is corrupt, only pleasure tonight." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was amazing. Our next reader is Rowan Regan. They is a 23-year-old recent graduate from the University of Winnipeg with a BA in filmmaking and English. Rowan is excited to be Jenny Wills's mentee through Creative Manitoba's professional mentorship program. Through this program, he's working on a creative nonfiction piece which explores queer and trans identity through a familial, multi-generational lens. Currently unpublished, Rowan is eager to learn what it takes to bring written work to the publishing world through their chosen genres of creative nonfiction, short fiction, and poetry. Please welcome Rowan.
Thank you for pre-adjusting that. So a little introduction to what I'll be reading today. It's a section from the work that I'm going to be working on with Jenny. As previously mentioned, it is like a mixture of genres somewhat. It's both creative nonfiction and also takes some poetic form at certain points. It's definitely something experimental that I'm working out with Jenny, which I'm very, very grateful for her guidance on and very excited to take this journey with. So this is a section titled Grief. It kind of starts from the middle. Jessie, quote, "Being queer, you have a relationship with grief pretty early on in life. And that politicized me because I was like, oh, people are not going to treat me well. So I want to create a world where people treat each other well. I was grieving for this life I knew I would never have, not that I wanted it," end quote. I used to say I felt like an alien back in high school, but in truth, that feeling has followed me as far back as I can remember. From the girls who asked me, "Are you a boy or a girl?" on the soccer field, to my first girlfriend who told me she might not actually be gay, to which I thought, I could be a boy for you. It took a while to recognize that I wasn't just on Earth, but from Earth. I shoveled into my own chest and pulled out the artifact of my heart. I displayed myself the way we are meant to as queer folks. In reality, the dust of my skin collects on bed sheets and hairbrushes just like anyone else. I am made of no thicker material, but must prove my earthliness like my life depends on it, because sometimes it does. Jessie, quote, "Yeah, and sometimes I think queer people get to this point of privilege where they just forget. They get this kind of amnesia about how hard it was, so they get comfy in the heteronormative world and forget that homophobia and transphobia exist," end quote. The blanket of straightness looks comfortable, right? If you look close enough in its patchwork, you can still see the threads of hurt. The times you were asked to disclose your genitals to others, The conversation Jessie had with their mom as a child where she asked, "Who do you imagine having sex with?" as a way to confirm sexuality. "But you were just a weird, confused kid." Jessie, quote, "I didn't have any mentors or elders. Generally, we don't because of HIV/AIDS, and it's happening again with the drug poisoning. I was thinking about this recently, how hard it was to not have those older people to look up to. The moral panic around trans people had died down until recently, so I kind of got to be a bit stealth in my transition. But there's still those fears in your head that you're going to be, well, you know," end quote. The first time I properly met older queer folks, I was 17 at Camp Aurora, a gay youth camp RRC puts together each summer. I was more open and daring than I'd ever been that summer. In retrospect, that community changed me. I jumped off a cliff into a lake for the first time. I laid on cold stones in the pouring rain. I embroidered a shitty little bird on canvas and gave it to my girlfriend at the time. I still have a rock from that beach on my desk. The limited elders we have in the queer community carry the most grief, lining beaches with soft and jagged stones alike. The young must cut their feet to cross the water. Many of us rely on history textbooks and surviving accounts of queerness to bridge the gap of our experiences. Thank you.
So I guess now I have the immense honor and privilege of introducing you to the star of the evening. I know I said I was not going to embarrass you, but I lied. So sorry for that. The gem of Winnipeg is the prairies produce precious metals. Do we have mining in Winnipeg, or is that only a West Coast thing? There's no mining. No.
I'm not from here either.
Okay, we don't know. Does anyone know? Okay, we'll find out later. Jenny Heijun Wills, whom I call Ani, older sister in Korean, and my BFF. I first met Jenny online in 2019 by sending her a very awkward Twitter message. And to her credit, she responded and told me where to buy false lashes. And then we finally met in 2022 in person when I was hired at the U of Winnipeg. She picked me up from the airport and she welcomed me to the city by teaching me how to glue on those lashes. It only took 2 years and I'm still a C student in makeup. Jenny is someone I text when I want to laugh, when I need help, from shovel truding beauty to academics to our boring literary stuff or my boring literary stuff. And if I ever need to bury a body, I know she'll ask many, many questions, but she'll likely help me, right? Or
I'll pay someone.
You'll pay someone, okay. I guess the friendship's still on, otherwise I'd be like, goodbye. So Jenny is someone who offers everything to her friends and family and expects nothing in return. Most of us here in the room know Jenny as a formidable writer and scholar, but she's also a generous friend, mentor, professor, and colleague who does nothing but uplift her colleagues and students at UW and the writing community here in Winnipeg and in Canada. I know I'm very lucky to know Jenny and to be part of her gaggle of geese on Gold Prairie, just what I call Winnipeg, not Gold Mountain, but Gold Prairie. So now I'm going to share her official bio. Jenny Heijun Wills was born in Seoul, South Korea, raised in Southern Ontario, Canada, and currently lives in Winnipeg, Manitoba. She's the author of Older Sister, Not Necessarily Related, a memoir, which received the 2019 Hillary Western Writers Trust Award for Nonfiction and the 2020 Eileen McTavish Sykes Award for Best First Book. She is a professor of English at the University of Winnipeg, where we have the privilege of working together. Everything and Nothing at All, essays. Also nominated again for the Hillary Weston, right? The largest $75,000 prize in Canada for best work of nonfiction. She's blushing now, right? She's so brilliant and gorgeous collection of literary criticism and a reflection on race, kinship, community, and identity. It is within these pages that readers have the immense pleasure of being inside Jenny's enormous brain. And I'm just going to read my blurb on the book, and I mean what I wrote, even if we are friends. I didn't just do it so I could list it on my activity report. Wills is one of the most incisive thinkers and writers in Canada today. A formidable tour de force by a fiercely brilliant mind, this is a collection that is structurally inventive in form and exquisite in its telling. So thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us today.
I feel like I can spend the rest of the hour thanking all of the people who brought me to this place. But for now, I'll say thank you to the Winnipeg Writers Fest, Plume Winnipeg, I think is how we're referring to it now. Formerly Thin Air. Thank you, Charlene Deal, especially, who is always the greatest shepherd and the calmest, coolest person one can meet, next to John Taves from McNally Robinson, who also a part of my lengthy thank you list. Thank you so much for always being so supportive of the Winnipeg Free Press as well. Thank you to Rowan Reagan and Jason Stefanik, who I don't actually consider to be students, but I consider to be writers that I'm always learning from and inspired by. So thank you so much for making this event way cooler than it would have been, I think, if it were just me. And yes, to Mei, to my literary and real life BFF, thank you, Lindsay Wong, for doing this. I know that you've worked so hard reading this collection, I think a few times, and then preparing for tonight. Quick thank yous to Martha Kanya-Forstner and Hilary Lowe, my editors at Knopf Canada, and everyone working at Penguin Random House Canada, including my publicist, Scott Sellers. Thank you to my Winnipeg publicist, Rory Bruce, and thank you to Jackie Kaiser and everyone at Westwood Creative Artists. Very, very, very special thank you to everyone for coming here tonight. Both online, sorry, that sounded shady, both online, coming online, as well as in person. I'm so grateful for such kindness and generosity and your time. So I am, I'm sorry to say, but you'll need to sit through a little bit of a reading from me, which I feel is trudging along a little bit. But I thought I would read from an essay that I didn't think would get very much attention, because I feel that my almost, let's not say obsession, but let's just say fixation, is that better? With literature and particular text is boring, but apparently it's not. And so I wrote this essay about language, and interwoven in the piece is literary and cultural criticism about what I think is one of the most formative texts in the world, in the history of the world, and that is Teresa Hackham's Dictee. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this text, it was written in 1982, or published, I should say, in 1982, and is this intertextual, experimental, multimedia, bizarre, opaque, rejecting text about colonialism, being a Korean immigrant, feminism, and all sorts of things. And in addition to how meaningful this work is, this particular, we'll say, autobiographical novel, is it's also quite striking that Teresa Cha had a very tragic life. So a week after her only book was published, she was only 30, she was quite brutally attacked and murdered. And so it's the only piece that we have from her, but it is resounding, I think. So I wanted to read some sections that I wrote about that particular book from the perspective of a Korean transracial and transnational adopted person. But I want to offer a content warning that I will be discussing some of the difficult things, especially her murder. And so please don't feel hesitant in any way about sort of like, you know, protecting your emotional space. So from Nightingale. She was always interested in language, voice, silence, secrets. From her performance art, like Aveugle Voix, which in 1975 featured the artist blindfolded with a white band of fabric upon which voice was printed, in French and in black letters, to the book for which she is most well known, the masterpiece, Dictée, which evidences how language can at once be play and punishment, pleasure and weapon, provocation and refusal. Teresa Heijun was and continues to be one of the foremost thinkers on the role of language and story for Korean diasporic peoples, and particularly Koreans in North America. Her career, like her life, was short and significant, silenced and screaming. And I don't believe myself to be the only Korean person, adopted or otherwise, who is comforted and overturned by what she said and what she didn't. The legacy of Korean feminism is knit into the version of language and expression created by Cha, from her art and writing to the tapestry of her pain, woven once her tongue was ripped out of her face so she could no longer tell, once she was transformed into a bird. I'll skip ahead a little bit. In the first section of Dictée, we come across an exercise, translation into French, and then simple declarative statements about speaking language, communication. It's impossible to know if this is an intertext or something else, something make-believe. At the bottom of the page, a list of instructions that ends with translate 8, wait till I write. The last exercise, naturally, is my favorite, not just because of the pun on the verb to till, as in to dig up, as in to unearth, as in to reap. It is my favorite because it is a thread that makes me feel closer to Cha, her writing, her experience, our ancestors, our community. The exercise, I assume, is declarative. Wait until I write to you. Await my communication. It won't be long. Mother, wait until I introduce myself through agency translated letters. But I also take Cha's last dictation as a warning. You just wait. Wait till I write and reap what you have sown. The Korean language, like French, is gendered, overtly in the way that English is gendered, with different terms for people of various genders. Amma for mommy, Appa for daddy, Imo, aunt who is younger than your mother, Gomo, aunt younger than your father. But power lies more in age, class, and status, where verbs are conjugated dependent on the speaker's position in relation to their listener. This reminds me of French class, where you must vouvoyer your instructor. But as a sub-creature in Korea, as a bloodless and cultureless and tongueless thing, how does one conjugate, I love you, I miss you, I'm sorry? She was more than a novelist, more than a memoirist. Teresa Heijun was also a filmmaker. She was a multimedia artist and a performer. She was a teacher. She was a student of Greek and French and Latin. She was a singer. She was an activist. She was a visionary. She was an immigrant. She was a graduate student. She was a transnational, returning to Korea every now and then. She was an editor. She was a documentarian. She was a spouse. She was a poet. She was much, much more than the devastation of her brilliant but short life. It took her family to find the crime scene. The police say they were looking, and maybe they were. But it was Cha's family, not the NYPD, who found her clothes, her missing shoe, her gloves, all covered in her blood. They were in the basement of the building where her husband told them they'd had plans to meet. Just the basement, the subaltern, nothing special, the basement. where the security guard who raped and murdered her worked, who was already accused of multiple sexual assaults in another state. The basement. That's where they found her clothes. No one thought to look there. Everyone probably acted surprised when Cha's brother and father found the crime scene in the basement. The killer. He tore her wedding ring off her probably already dead finger, kept it as a memento. Cha's book was published the week before. She was 30. It, the book, would come to change the way people think about literature, especially from that time period. She, the person, would for a long time be a statistic, one of many Asian women assaulted, killed, thrown away without much thought. Unlike the women she dictated into immortality in her book, the women she wanted to bring into the light, to accentuate their audacity in fighting back, to resurrect, to disclose their diversity, to hail their humanity. Her legacy didn't stay buried forever, just like her clothes, which were bagged and brought up from the basement. The violence of her rape and murder didn't come to define her. It was unearthed as part of her tragic end, but it wasn't defining what that man did. He stole her ring. He also stole the experience she might have had in the sunlight of our admiration, adoration, and adulation, which, as Shelley Sun Wong notes, emerged from an almost decade-long obscurity into relative prominence in Asian American literary circles. But he could not entomb her power. He could not shadow over her legacy. That much is true. Cha herself, in the voice of her speaker, refers to excavation through language. From noted women warriors to her own mother, she unburies their bones with language. She writes, oh, this is in italics, so it's hard for me to see. Dead words, dead tongue, from disuse, buried in time's memory, unemployed, unspoken, history, past. Let the one who is disuse, one who is mother, who waits 9 days and 9 nights be found. Restore memory. Let the one who is disuse, one who is daughter, restore spring with her each appearance from beneath the earth. The ink spills thickest before it runs dry, before it stops writing. In this visibly defined moment, as the speaker alludes to Demeter awaiting Persephone, ripped down into abjection, to the basement, to the place of debasing, she also offers a meta-commentary on her role as speaker, as disuse, a near match for the way words, history, people have become disused, as she puts it. It reminds me of the contronym refuse, the verb to reject, versus the noun of trash or apprehension, the verbs to hate, to take, to hesitate. For me, this passage circles back to that earlier dictation, wait till I write. Persephone, the goddess of spring, embodied fertility, growth, and flowers out of the deadened underworld where she'd been dragged. Wait until the fruit of what has happened ripens. Wait until death, the scattered seed, germinates and flowers anew. Wait until memory is to be tilled, history tilled, language, dead tongue, dead body, dead nation, dead mother, is tilled and resurrected into something touchable and holdable and real. The history will not be told because the tongue has already been severed, but it will be written and made alive that way. Wait till I write.
Thank you so much for that beautiful reading. That's one of my favorite passages, one of my favorite quotes, which I took and stole, and I wrote back to you. I have a few questions, if that is okay. I promise, okay, the reading is over. And I promise not to be too hard on you. And then I have a lightning round, which might be fun. Okay.
Lindsay's lightning rounds are infamous.
Great. So the first question, it's pretty easy. I want to congratulate you on your second Hillary Weston nomination. It's honestly so well deserved. Like the way you write, your gorgeous prose, and how does it feel to be up for the largest prize in Canada again?
Scary. It feels surprising and shocking because I think as you're sort of suggesting, it is quite unusual. I'm right now basking, I think, in the glow of knowing that those 3 jurors, and look them up because it will take you to your knees, have read more than 3 of my consecutively placed words at some point in their lives. That's sort of the place that I'm in right now, just awe that these amazing writers have read something.
That's just so thoughtful of you to say that. And I think I'm asking this question because I have a ulterior motive. I want to know if we can go to Vegas if you win. Right? And I think the English department, we want an espresso machine. We also want a cotton candy machine and a popcorn maker. Just so you know, that's on the table.
Oh my goodness, well, there's some people in the front row here who might be impacted by my choices in buying cotton candy machines. They're fun.
Great, thank you. So a little more serious question. So you and I are often talking about how memoir is really fraught and it's complex, and it can be emotionally volatile for queer writers of color. People misjudge, they overlook craft elements, and they focus on identity politics, or they fixate on some aspect of the personal that I think can be really, really uncomfortable. And I think it's really complicated when you're writing from this transracial lens and wanting to also protect the privacy of your subjects. I remember you told me once that you'd never write a memoir again. You never write
essays. What are you talking about?
There is memoir in it. And now you have a collection of award-nominated essays. So why focus on nonfiction and why now?
Mm-hmm. This is a really complicated 3 or 4 questions I feel stacked in there.
You can pick one.
Okay. I'll see, you know, one of the things that I hear you asking about is the difficulty of being a life writer, let's say, especially from marginalized positions. And I think you're right that that so often one is expected to only be writing from maybe unthoughtful experiential places or uncrafted experiential places. And I think that that makes one sometimes hesitate to continue to pursue any kind of writing, because let's be honest, it happens also in fiction writing too, right? A BIPOC fiction writer will be asked, like, you know, when did this happen to you? Even though it's like a fantasy novel or whatnot. I think the other question that you're asking is, how does one protect privacy when doing life writing? And I think that I'm quite forthright about my own life, but I do think, and I'm increasingly thinking the more and more I do nonfiction, about the privacy of the figures in my life who become characters in the nonfiction texts that I write. And so that's also a piece that leads me to your actual question, which is, why do you do nonfiction if it's so complicated in all these ways? To be honest, I would love to be writing fiction also, and I do publish short fiction here and there. However, I also feel that sometimes one has a very, what I've been told is an unusual life, I guess, or perspective on life, that that seems to be an easier avenue for the way that I'm thinking sometimes. And so that's why, and if my life could just like calm down a little bit in terms of the goings on, then maybe I could stop finding so much water in what's happening.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm so afraid of creative nonfiction. No more.
You're like the acclaimed Lindsay Wong. Like, it's an Hillary Weston fame. So
I know I'm switching to fiction. I'm too afraid of it. But thank you for your honest answer. So in your interviews, I've heard you describe this book as an intellectual companion to your memoir, and I'm wondering if you could talk more about that.
Yeah, so it was pointed out to me by my brilliant colleague and fellow nonfiction writer, Saley Slipka, that this book seems like it's a book that knows itself a little bit more, whereas the first book was sort of searching and figuring things out. And it dawns on me that initial memoir was very feelings forward, very emotional, very aesthetically doing something, I think. And in this text, I wanted to say, well, you know, there was a lot of thinking and probably overthinking, if one knows me, that was going on around all of those feelings. And I wanted to present a companion to those first thoughts on adoption and adoption experience and reunion experience. And I think I've tried to do that with this one.
Oh, for sure. And you succeed so beautifully. Is that sort of how you were able to arrive at the current structure and shape of the collection?
So it began with a few already published essays that appeared in literary journals, and I wrote a proposal with some ideas about other essays I might be interested in fleshing out. And what was originally 9 essays was then brilliantly, from my editor's advice, morphed into 5. And the curious thing to me is, so my editors are so smart and so kind that they just gently nudge ideas. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And then it's now that I've been talking about the book since its publication, I'm like, oh, that's why they wanted me to do that. And so I'm like, wow, this whole like thesis comes out, because I don't think about thesis when I'm writing an essay. Don't pay attention to that, students of literary criticism. But it's interesting how those things have come to be. It sort of became much shorter than it was originally intended to be.
So interesting, because I remember you would send us little snippets, and some of us colleagues in the audience would, it was like almost like a little ransom notes from you. But really good ransom notes were just beautifully written. And then you were able to turn it into this beautiful collection of essays. That's how your mind works.
I mean, I think we're seeing more how your mind works right now.
I don't think so. I think we influence each other. But it did feel like a ransom note.
Okay.
So moving on. So many of us here in the audience, you know, we're very lucky to call you big sister, partner in crime, best friend, mentor, colleague, and confidant. You're pretty much Siri, you know, in human form. You know, we come to you for help with lashes, makeup, tenure, cooking, stomach and gastric, eye twitching, household issues. You know, there's like no problem you can't solve it. And I think that's what makes you such a brilliant writer. But seriously, you know, back to craft. You know, we have Jenny the writer in this book. We have Jenny the person, Jenny the fashionista and beauty queen, and then we also have Jenny the scholar, which just shows how multifaceted and complicated you are as a creative nonfiction character. So in your collection, your speakers are all expressing themselves in very different ways. Could you maybe talk about how you characterize your literary personas on the page, and what brought you as an author to those choices? So I'm drawing on your lit scholar expertise here.
No, I love this question because it's true. There are different versions of my speaker that show up in different essays in this text, and it's very fractured, which is, I think, a parallel to how I feel often in life, that there are just different positions that I occupy depending on where I am. And so it's interesting for you to point that out to me. I think in general, if I were to characterize my speaker overall, I would say that she is trying to be romantic, wants to talk about pop culture, but also feels tragically uncool doing it, and also is shy about some of her academic background. And I think I'm edging towards it a little bit more in this book than in the last, but I don't know why that part of myself is hard for me to portray in a speaker. It makes me feel too vulnerable, maybe. Isn't that weird to be like, I'll do memoir so that I don't feel vulnerable.
Because you can craft and manipulate the truth of memoir, right? I think there's something about it, whereas in a collection of essays, we're kind of just stuck in someone's brain, right? There's no lying.
Okay, well, you don't lie in memoir also.
Shapes in memoir.
Yes.
You manipulate.
I say in classes, I always say that life writing or not creative nonfiction is about not necessarily telling the truth, but not lying.
I call it like pruning.
Okay.
That's just me. And how was that? What was it like for you to do the audiobooks? I remember you were telling us all about the different voices, and that was so interesting to me.
Right, the different voices in my head. That was a different conversation that we were having. Yeah, the audiobook is so interesting because I didn't read the audiobook for my last text, but for this one I did. And in this collection of essays, I'm thinking about arrangement on the page differently and trying to use the shape of the page and the look of the page a little bit more. And I'm looking to my poet mentors and friends in that way. But it's so curious when it comes time to record an audiobook, how they think about those kinds of things. And so there are certain moments that are fragmented on the page and certain essays here. And one of the options that the producer and director came upon for the audiobook was to have it sound like different voices coming in different places, which I thought was such a cool idea. And now, like in every book, I feel one learns something new about the publishing industry. Now I'm thinking about that as I'm working on my next project. Like, what will the audiobook have to be like?
It's really so interesting. I'm too afraid to do my own audio. It sounds amazing.
It was fun.
Yeah. So there's this scene in the book where you come over to my apartment and you dye my hair purple, and my head gets stuck in the sink.
Just so we're clear, everyone, I never name anyone in my nonfiction.
I'm outing myself.
So, yeah, if you want to expose yourself, that's fine.
Privacy of subjects, very important.
Yeah.
And that's when we learned my head was very big, right? It got stuck in a sink. And I say this because I would say, like, you really care and look out for me, like just like one of my big Asian cousins in Vancouver. And yet in your collection, you write about how Asian Canadian authors brought you home to your people. And I'm wondering if you could speak more about how these Asian diaspora writers have shaped your own understanding of being an Asian person and writer.
Sure, thanks. So when I turned 20 or when I went away to college, originally I moved away from my family home and my hometown. And so when I grew up as a transracial adopted individual, everyone around me was white, and I didn't necessarily feel comfortable or have the access to much sort of Asian cultural community. But also when I moved to Toronto, people thought that it was very strange that I didn't have this experience, so I didn't know how I could access these kinds of things, and I turned to literature, in fact, and there's an entire essay called Not Just as a Pleasure in this text, where I'm weaving through a history of reading, I think, myself into existence, because it felt like the safest way to access certain aspects of ethnicity and culture, to learn about the history of my community and adjacent communities, and to do that privately, but memorably, I think. And so writers like Kim Tui, I'll be meeting in a couple of weeks. I'm so astounded. Wei Sin Choi, of course. I mean, it's very long bibliography for that essay, I think. Have just really made me feel a sense of cultural community before I became a writer, and even more so since.
That essay just really, really fascinating, and I can really relate to it as well. Thank you for that. In the interest of time, I have a million questions, but would you like to go to a lightning round? I get to like quiz you.
Would people like to hear a lightning round?
Yeah. All right. Okay. Writing a memoir.
Wait, what are the rules?
Whatever comes to your mind, you just have to say something.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Writing a memoir is like fill in the blank, but writing a collection of essays is like fill in the blank.
Oh
It feels like an SAT
I know,
question. I'm
my
sorry.
brain
I can skip.
works this way. I would say it's funny because I gave a lot of interviews and I tried to slip in baseball metaphors for a lot of things because I love baseball so much, but no one picked up on that, I guess. So, so I'm gonna use a running metaphor. Okay. Here, I think it works. I don't know, I don't run. Writing a memoir for me was like sprinting towards something, whereas writing a collection of essays was like me specifically trying to do a marathon where I'd run a little bit and then like stand there and question my life decisions and then run a little bit more and then be out of breath and then lie down and fall asleep.
Great metaphor. Okay. One thing you wish you had known before becoming a creative writer?
That I'm shyer than I think, that I thought that I was, and that there's a lot of public, there are a lot of public elements in being a writer.
That's pretty terrifying. What is your writerly superpower?
I can write extremely quickly, and I've been told it's quite obnoxious when I talk about how quickly I write.
It's true, I've seen how fast you write. It's like 100 pages. Like I go to the bathroom, it's like okay. It's true. What are some books that you wish you had written, or something that you admire or envy in other writer styles or habits?
I wish I had written On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. Of course. I wish I'd written Rue. I wish I had written Their Eyes Were Watching God. I could go on forever. Yes. I'm like such a fan of books. So.
Amazing. Pet peeve in contemporary literature. Okay.
I don't want this to discourage anyone from, if you do choose to, borrow the book from the library or buy a copy. The ruffle edge pages, I know it's supposed to be a flex when your book is published with the like ruffly pages, the torn. But as a teacher, and as a reader, like I cannot, and as a long nail wearer, like I cannot navigate the ruffle pages, and it gives me anxiety reading from here because I don't know like how to turn the page. Like it's alarm. It's disproportionate, my anger, I think.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. How would you commit the perfect murder and get away with it? I'm asking because I think professors would be very good at it because we're so organized.
What professors do you know?
Most of us. I feel like department chairs would be the best at it.
Oh yeah,
they're like, they'd be like murder by committee.
But I have a note from my doctor saying I never have to be department chair, so I'm not organized at all. I would poison because I cook a lot, and it's ladylike. Just kidding. That's not a thing.
So we're not going
to do things like that. That's okay.
Okay. 3 dead writers that you would take with you on a 6-month residency on a tropical island, and why? So assuming we can reanimate them as like zombies, like they're not ghosts.
Okay.
If that makes a difference.
I don't know if I'd have the capacity to do a 6-month writing retreat or go to a tropical island, but 3 perished writers that I'd like to meet would be obviously Toni Morrison, obviously Teresa Tapp, and I have a not too lengthy but significant section about Wuthering Heights in this book, so I'd say Emily Bronte.
Thank you. I might just pop by.
But she definitely is not going to a tropical island. Emily Bronte, come on.
It's true. No. Zombies, right?
Well, that's okay. But yeah.
Okay. Most embarrassing moment at a literary event, and you can skip this one, but I'm gonna find out later.
Okay. I'm not going to say what it was, but it happened here at McNally.
Okay, I need to like find out the information later. And so that concludes the lightning round. You survived. I'm sorry. I'm going to turn it over to the audience, and I want you to remember that BIPOC and marginalized authors are often subject to scrutiny and judgment. So this is a very gentle reminder to think before you ask. And then afterwards, I think Leah and Janice, somewhere, where are they? They will probably tackle you I'm pretty sure. The history department will tackle you.
Historians are badass.
A few moments if anyone has a question, and I think John will come with the mic. We're not equipped to run with the mic, so John will have to do it. We scared them.
Ariane. Hi, Lee. Well, you can't tackle yourself, so it's kind of.
No, it's really hard to ask a question.
She peer reviewed the question.
I did.
Me
I have a
before.
peer reviewer.
Yes, I peer reviewed it.
Peer review is a systemic inequality. It's a tool of oppression and like
Highly colonial,
yes,
exclusionary.
Yeah.
But I did it because I was afraid of asking that question. So when I read this book, I felt very similar to Celise in that I felt it was, if I may, the older sister to older sister. And I was wondering what you think the narrator or speaker in your most recent book would say to the narrator and older sister.
Oh my goodness. Oh no, this reminds me of therapy when they're like, talk to your younger self. I think that the speaker in this collection would say to the speaker in my memoir, it's okay to lead with your heart, and people will accept that part of you, because even though you've been quite closed off and continue to be quite closed off in real life around hard things, maybe on the page is actually the homecoming for you. That's what you'd say.
That was such a great answer.
Thank you for the beautiful question.
Other questions? Any brave souls out there?
Hi, how has your writing process changed since you first became a writer?
Yeah. Thanks, it's a great question. Because I became a writer kind of on accident or an avoidance. I was supposed to be writing a scholarly book, and these prose poems just came out, and I was just like, I'm never doing that other stuff again. It's so out of my comfort zone. But with that first book, the assumption was that very few people would read it, actually, and I think the expectation in some ways with this book was that some people at least would read it. And so already thinking about audience from the beginning shifted the way that I was writing. I'm also thinking much more deliberately about the act of writing. The more I'm learning about craft, I'm sort of learning as I go also. And so I've been reading more about craft and trying to figure out how I can present different and unique speakers and not do the same thing over and over again. Because I think if we keep doing life writing over and over again, it can be a bit tiresome and redundant for everyone else. So yeah, hopefully more thoughtful. Thank you for the question.
Your first work of creative nonfiction was award-winning. This one's just out and it's nominated for another award. Same award, amazing award. How badly do you want to punch people who immediately just ask, what are you working on next?
I never want to punch people.
You'll just poison them.
Strange sometimes. I personally like that question a lot, but when I was doing academic writing, it gave me a lot of anxiety and panic. And so perhaps, like, I understand your perspective as an academic writer, largely. I know moving into life writing yourself. It felt very almost judgmental, I felt, when people would ask, what are you working on next, in those sort of scholarly conversations. Now I'm so excited because I always have something else that I'm thinking about already, if not many things. And I don't say much because I feel like writers like talk too much about their next project that never actually makes it to the page. But I love the question now that I found the right fit mode of representation for me. So no punching, just hugging.
Thank you. I think we probably have one more, and then I think Charlene will come up. Thanks.
Can you just, the term life writing, that's a new term to you tonight. I just wondered if you could elaborate a bit on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Thanks for the reminder that I'm so like jargony and obnoxious. Life writing, the way I think of it is things that encapsulate memoir, autobiography, some kinds of literary journalism, like writing about a life, really. And so it's my way of skirting around saying, you know, this is definitely personal essay or this is definitely memoir, especially because I'm trying to, or I end up, I think, moving between or combining different genres of writing. It's a way, it's kind of an umbrella term, I think, for a lot of those modes. Yeah. But thank you.
Thank you. And that's Jenny Heijun Wills, everybody. Together from the Writers Festival to take the stage for a bit. But don't forget to get a copy of this gorgeous and devastating book of essays. Jenny will be staying behind for a signing, I believe.
You actually can't leave until you've got one. Isn't that how it goes?
It's murder, right?
Yeah, there's poisoning about to happen. What a beautiful, fascinating, funny, far-ranging conversation. Thank you both. Lindsay, I would hate to be on the side of the short snappers. Honestly, they were terrifying. Memoir, his first memoir, that it's an act of trust to share your own voice and your own story. And Jenny, I think one of the things that you do in all of your writing is you entrust us as your readers and your listeners with your ways of seeing and speaking. And it's been so fascinating tonight to see also how you are processing your own growth as a writer from memoir through to personal essays, which maybe are giving you a little bit more room, but are not really leaving this territory, the complex territory of what is it to be a self in the world, wherever that world is and whatever it looks like. So congratulations on a beautiful book and a great nomination. So we all here have our fingers crossed about that. I'm going to make a little extra sideways thank you to Knopf Canada because John thanked McClelland and Stewart. So do we shame John for that? No, we don't, right? No, John makes like one error every 4 years. So tonight, you know, we were lucky to witness that. I'd like to pause to say a huge thank you to McNally Robinson for being this extraordinary place in our community, this place that allows us to gather and encounter voices that we might not otherwise meet, and to be together in this calm and comfortable space where we can be full of trust for one another. So would you please thank McNally Robinson and Elizabeth Ashley. This is day 2 of the Writers Festival, Thin Air. We had a great day 1, and we're just wrapping up a great day 2. We're on our way over to a French cabaret before this day is quite done. So if you race over to CCFM, you can listen in French, or even if you can't, you'd be welcome over there. And we have many things lined up over the next few days. So these cool little maps are your guide to everything, and you can find them on the signing table over here. We do have 2 more events here at the store as part of Thin Air. One is next Saturday. The irrepressible Rosanna Deerchild will be here launching her new book, She Falls Again, with host Tasha Spillett. That is a night not to miss. And the day after, Sunday the 29th, Andrea Curry is here in the afternoon as part of a series that we call Mijoté Stories, which is a way of honoring Theodore Mijoté Fontaine, who was a beloved elder here and a longtime friend of the festival. And that will be hosted by Kate Vermette. Both of those are going to be extraordinary events. And then after the festival is done, we continue our pas de deux, the Plume Winnipeg and McNally Robinson. So we'll be back here on October 27th with Amanda Peters and November 28th with John Elizabeth Stintsey. And both of those are going to be really extraordinary events too. But if you come here even once in a while, you know that there's beautiful and brilliant events happening here, and you should just come back often. But also, you should buy books. And right now you have a chance to buy Jenny's book, and she'll sign it, presumably, unless she has taken an immediate dislike to you. And you might want to just check and make sure she's not slipping your poison somehow in there, because she's dangerous. Like, look at her. You're not dressed like a killer today, but it's sort of a killer dress
like
though.
Mushroom, like the Super Mario.
Super Mario, Super Jenny. One more enormous round of applause for Jenny Wills.